I believe Christians making games is super important. I do not believe everyone should be doing it because it's not everyone's calling.
Hello and welcome to Faith Forms. Today I have a really special guest. It's somebody I've been bugging about getting on here for a long time. Brennan McPherson.
Hi, guys. Good to be here, Brock. Thanks.
Brennan is actually my boss, which is kind of a weird thing to say because I haven't had a boss in a long time. But Brennan is are you the CEO or president? What are you technically?
President
Of the Salvation Poem Project. And Brennan, tell people a little bit about yourself and the Salvation Poem.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the Salvation Poem Project is a nonprofit ministry that's dedicated to crafting stories to share Jesus Christ with the world. So essentially, we're like a nonprofit media company. We do game development, film development, multimedia discipleship courses, publishing, music. It's anything artistic that we can craft into a story in some way to tell the gospel. That's what we're focused on. So a little bit different from a lot of ministries, but not totally foreign too.
Yeah, it is unique. How did you end up there?
Sort of by accident in a lot of ways. So I went to school for business management, and I spent most of my time playing music professionally. And it was a weird mixture of, I went on tour for a while, and I thought music was going to be the pathway for me. I'd pursued it very seriously throughout high school. By the time I was 17, I was, playing professionally, drums,
nice,
doing session work and so like studio recording, and also just gigging around the kind of Twin Cities area in Minneapolis. And then when I went on tour, I was like, yeah, touring sucks. I don't want to be doing this for forever. It's like, I just realized really quickly it wasn't a great way to have a family, and I wanted to get married, I want to have kids and be there. And when you're, professional musician, most of them have to be touring like 2/3 of the year.
Wow.
And so you're gone from your family, and it's not a good setup because you grow in a different direction from your spouse because you're just never together. And then you come back and you're like, wow, hi, stranger. And then there's weird stuff that crops up. And I just didn't want anything to do with that. So gave up music and was sad for myself for about a year.
Yeah, understandable.
And then I got over it. And writing kind of took that space for me. So as I finished out my college degree in business management, which was pretty much focused on manufacturing, which I had zero interest in, but still was like a responsible thing to do, I was pursuing writing. I got into writing novels. I wrote a bunch of biblical fiction that straddled, the first book kind of straddled fantasy, horror, and biblical fiction, which was a really not good combination. So if you're wondering, it's a bad idea. Don't do that. And then I went, I was traditionally published for the first book. It flopped horribly. It was like the totally painful experience. And I was like, you know what? I can do this better on my own. And so I went and indie published a bunch of more books, kind of shifted more towards traditional biblical fiction with a slight fantasy twist because it was early Genesis stuff, like pre-flood. And did well with that. And I was going to, and then out of college, as I was writing those books, I started working at the nonprofit, which at the time was called the Salvation Poem Foundation. And there was just two of us. It was like a tiny little nonprofit that my parents started that was like to carry on the legacy of the Salvation Poem song, which is a 6-line song formatted as a sinner's prayer that carries the essence of the gospel. And, I wanted to be involved in ministry, and there was an opening there. My father-in-law worked there, and I was really close with him. And I was like, hey, is there an opening here for me to, and there was at the time, it was like director of licensing and operations. So I was like, okay, fine, I can do that. So I was like writing books and pursuing that. I wanted to do creative stuff. I didn't just want to be in a cubicle job. I wanted to create things and tell stories. And so I was honing the craft and, working crazy hours outside of work to make that happen. Published 5 novels
Oh, wow.
during that time period, and got to the point where I could jump to doing it full time. And then a few things happened. The world exploded with COVID. My brother passed away from cancer, and we did something new at the nonprofit. We actually created New Believer course, and that was a little bit of a passion project for me. So I wrote it with my father-in-law, ironically enough, and we produced it and developed a multimedia discipleship course as a next step resource after the Salvation Poem, and started licensing it to ministries and had a lot of success. And it was at that point where I was like, okay, I could do this. I could stay here doing this. I could get into this. So we went and talked to the board, and I was like, okay, we could go one of two directions. We could make ourselves into a media company where we're making new things, or we could just go back to just, managing the Salvation Poem intellectual property, translating it into new languages, and then licensing it to other ministries. And the board was like, well, that's easy. Let's turn it into a media company. I was like, well, that sounds easy. But we need probably $20 million to do that effectively and prove that we can get the actual traction we need in the marketplace to attract donors and everything. And they're like, okay, we'll do that. So we started moving forward. And I knew we needed some key hires. So we hired on John Schaefer, formerly the lead producer of Superbook. We had a friendship that we built over the years because of the partnership on Superbook. And we're both nerds and into the same things. And I was like, hey, you want to come work for us? We got 2 people. And he's like, sure. So he came and joined us. And, it's just the right timing in his life and in where we were. And since then, we've built out the nonprofit over the last roughly 3.5 years from 2 people to, 24 full-time people. And we started up the Light of the World Film Project on either side of me. And, spun up over 600 contractors to make that work. And, it's all been funded by donation, and now is kind of the jump off point for us to transition into being more outward facing, developing a broader donor base and all that. So it's sort of like we fell into it, but also very purposely chased it. And a lot of it goes back to, me and Craig, my father-in-law, and just the early people that we got on board. We were all creatives. Craig was a full-time musician for 35 years, creative. He designs landscaping and has, an art background. And we both were just in that space. And it was genuine expressions of who we were. And if we were going to do ministry, if we were going to serve God, we just wanted to make things that were beautiful, that showed how beautiful Jesus was. And so, for whatever reason, we got the opportunity to actually do that and worked our faces off to make it happen. So, there's a 9-month period where we were pulling 80 to 100 hours a week to make it all work. So, we're a small team that's been pulling a big weight, and it's been huge pressures, but we're very, very lucky to have the opportunity. And, we'll see what happens in the future. But that's essentially how we got here, was hey, we had a dream. We took some small steps first. We've been doing, stewarding this thing for many years. It's just we didn't really have an opportunity to make it into much of anything until that point when everything happened with COVID, everything shut down. We're like, well, we're not doing anything. We might as well make something. And so we had a real small budget for a New Believer course, and then that expanded. So it was we had to prove that we could be trusted with the budget, with creative production. We had to figure out how to do it. And then we had to actually execute when we were given the opportunity, which was way harder than it seems, actually. And you always look forward to oh, if we could just get the money to do this big project, it'd be great. And then you're there and you're like, holy crap, this is the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. And now I can't sleep.
That's real. That's truth right there.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
So is there other Christian nonprofit media companies that you can point to as examples?
Yeah, I'd say probably one of the closest ones is the Bible Project. And they're much larger than we are right now. But they've built that over many years, and they started out doing that as just a side thing that they were passionate about. And they did good with it, and they snowballed it. They started small, did what they could, and then now they've built it into something because of their faithful stewardship. So, but that's probably the closest. I mean, there's other ones too. Like there's this company that's doing like Lego stop motion Bible stories, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And they've been growing that as well. So there's a lot more that's cropped up recently that I've seen, but not a lot of huge legacy nonprofit ministries. I mean, you have things like CBN, but in the modern era, there's not a lot of big older ministries were based off publishing companies originally, which is kind of like that era's version of what we're doing. And they've grown into kind of like big distribution companies, and we're a little bit different because we focus on content creation and then we license it to other ministries, etc. So we can remain small and nimble.
So as a ministry, why make video games? Why is that part of the mix?
Well, it sounds really not smart, but we thought it was cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like number one was we thought it was cool, should be done, wanted to do it. I've been a huge gamer my whole life, and gaming's been. It feels weird to say it's a passion. It's not really a passion, but it's something that I'm passionate about just because of the impact it's had in my life and the space it's taken in my life.
Yeah, totally.
And a lot of my relationships, like my brother who passed away, he was on the spectrum and had bipolar, and like all of our good memories together were us playing games together. And like that was our relationship, you know?
Yeah.
And outside of that, there wasn't really much of a way that we could have a relationship. And so there's like spaces for relationship that games can craft that other types of things just don't or can't, especially for certain personality types and certain people. So, it's a massive demographic that's not well reached at this point or serviced by the church, and in many ways has kind of been spurned by traditional churches. I think artists in general have kind of felt that way from time to time. I grew up in really rural Wisconsin, and it's like, well, you got a bunch of farmers, and they don't really understand how art is created. They don't care that much usually. And so it almost seems like they know the danger that's there, but they don't really know the positives.
Yeah,
so
totally. Yeah.
The bias kind of trends towards, watch out for that, which can make you feel a little bit like an outsider. But yeah, so there's cultural reasons too.
So tell people about our first game, Clayfire, and also how you've approached it. Like, this is the first game as a ministry you've are making, and you haven't had game experience before, game development experience. So I'm curious just to kind of lay out for people to tell how you've approached it.
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, the way that it came about was, I had this game idea. And really, it more so started as like a conceptual idea that could be crafted into a game world. Yeah. So it's more like world building at the beginning than anything else. I was like, wouldn't it be cool if, this whole world was created off the symbolism of the Gospel of John? It's like, they're all clay people and their fire is their life. And, I was like, we could do that. I was looking at the time I was playing a lot of little indie games like Hollow Knight and Gris or however you pronounce it. Sorry. Gree, I don't know. And Stardew Valley, games that were built by just a handful of people or one person. And of course, those are like ridiculous outliers.
But you didn't know that.
But I didn't know that. And it's probably a good thing I didn't. Yeah. It's like naivety is bliss, right? So I had a Bible study with a couple buddies, Nick and David. And it was at that Bible study, family restaurant. I was like, guys, come on, like we could do this. Let's do this. You're an animator. you do like, audio engineering. I could probably figure out Unity. Let's do it. And so it was just kind of ridiculous. But we got started and tried figuring out like, okay, what would the game world look like? And I started working out, crafting, like, what would the story be? What would it be about? What would the goals be? And, started learning Unity a little bit. Quickly abandoned that because I realized I was horrible at it. And we just focused on what we could do at the time and started building out concepts, visual concepts, and built a little kind of proof of concept demo that really didn't have any gameplay. It was just like, it's a side scroller. Okay, I have them move and jump and collect stuff, and a few things happen that are visually cool, and use that to convince the board that it was a good idea to give us some money to hire some people to actually do real game design. And that's how we got Jeff involved, and then by proxy you, and just kind of faked it till we made it.
Yeah.
Made it up as we went along.
So how did you do things like budgeting and putting together that plan? How did you know what you needed to make this thing?
Well, I think that side, we were already really deep into Light of the World by the time we really took Clayfire seriously. And I was the lead producer for Light of the World. And so just being through that it was trial by fire on the film. It was a $20 million animated film. So figuring out the pipeline, budgeting, hiring people on, contracts, how all that works, helped a lot because, it is a totally different pipeline for game development, but there are some similarities. It's like, okay, you need people to do layout. You need people to do conceptual design, character designs, background designs, prop designs, VFX designs. You got animations. You've got gameplay design. You got QA testing. You can list out the different processes and roughly how long it might end up taking. I just took everything and multiplied it by like 2, like what I expected it would be, and was like, okay, now add 50%, and tried to build out a timeline that was fairly reasonable because I knew in general what artists and animators could turn out. Just
based on the film,
volume, based on the film and the experience that we had there. So I mean, that's how that came to be. But it's not like that's held totally true since we budgeted it out. I mean, it's expanded a bit. So yeah, even with all that, it's like inexperience definitely is painful, but it's been pretty close overall. But that's how I approached it.
So Clayfire is a fantasy adventure hand-drawn platformer. We're going to launch it on multiple platforms: Steam, iOS, Android. It's going to be in multiple languages. What's the significance of this game? Why choose this game? I know you had that idea for it, but like, why is it so important to you?
Well, me personally, I've always really loved single player story experiences in gaming. I know a lot of people don't, or think that they don't. And I've always been a little bit underwhelmed with how well story's been executed in a lot of games. Although there's been some standout games that I really, really deeply enjoyed. And I always wanted to play a 2D kind of side-scroller adventure game that was really story heavy. I just couldn't find anything that quite scratched that itch. So just from like a demographic standpoint, this is the game that I wish existed. And also it was within scope for a smaller team because it's 2D and it's, not a big MMO or anything ridiculously massive like that. So there's like some pragmatic concerns with like, okay, we could do it in scope. But aside from that, I love fantasy parables.
Yeah.
And just for me, what's so beautiful about fantasy is that you can make abstract thought concrete in fantasy.
Mhm.
And so it's like, okay, one example of that is the Lord of the Rings, which everyone uses as an example, of course, but there's reasons. The ring, the One Ring is a concrete example of many different kinds of symbols. It's interpreted in many different ways. It's interpreted by some people as addiction, or as sin nature, or the temptation of powerful weapons of war like atomic bombs. But because it's symbolic, it can mean many things at the same time on purpose, and it can have kind of reinterpretations through the years that bears more fruit from it, where it's like, oh, there's so much richness there. Just from an artistic standpoint, it's like, yeah, this becomes very meaningful.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason why it's resonated through the generations, is because there's these very vivid, visceral human metaphors that are made concrete in the actual like physical world of Lord of the Rings. Even the divide between dwarves and elves, that's a symbol for a lot of things in our world too, and orcs and people, and Sauron versus Gandalf, and even Saruman. These things hold deep meaning without feeling like Pilgrim's Progress, which maybe I shouldn't throw shade, but I kind of hate that story with a passion. I just don't like where it's like super on the nose and it's like one for one.
Sure.
Like, it doesn't excite me as an artist, and it feels more like propaganda, which I think is a little bit insulting to people. At least it feels insulting to a lot of people. Modern audiences are pretty sophisticated these days. And so, they want to be involved in interpreting what these things mean. And so I really enjoy fantasy parables. And for me, just making something that I could look at and be proud of as a work of art, where it's like, okay, if I was a kid, I would think this is cool. And it would move me and speak for me and my values and the things that I believe in as a Christian. I really wanted to make that sort of experience for kids where it sounds weird, kind of shallow to be like, Christianity can be cool. It's not what I mean. But like, to just make something cool as an artist, you want to do that, and I think there's value in that, not just from the sense of, okay, it can be okay to be a Christian artist, but also from the sense of you're giving people something they can consume that they're moved by and stimulated by, that draws them closer to God instead of further away.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot that's out there that's really cool that does not draw you closer to God whatsoever. And I think, the more that you are engaged in stuff that is godly, the more that it's good for your soul. And we consume enormous amounts of entertainment media these days, and so we need more. So I just feel really passionate about, let's make great things that we're excited about, that draw us closer to God instead of pushing us further away, and do it with excellence so that you're not embarrassed giving this to an atheist, and so that they don't feel talked down to or insulted by the message within it, so honoring to your audience as well. So, I mean, and that's a lot of, it's mixed in with my personal opinions on things. And so obviously everyone's going to have a different opinion, but that's kind of my general approach and what I care about. So,
yeah, that's good. I'd like to drill down just a little bit more into the technical aspects of this. How are we intertwining our faith in this game? A lot of people are like, are we putting Bible verses in it? Where's the the spiritual depth meet in this game, and how are we thinking about that?
Yeah, we tried to approach it from a lot of different angles, and what we ended up with is there are scripture verses in the game. But what I don't like is when, it's like, oh, you do this thing and then you get the scripture verse and it has no real natural tie-in with the world or with the game that you're playing. It's just like, you need Bible, I'll give you Bible, and and that's fine, it's good, but it's not actually well crafted from an artistic perspective.
Right.
So I wanted to push for, how do we make this natural to the gameplay and to the world itself? And so the scriptures basically end up forming sort of like the lore background of the symbolism, the visual symbolism that's there, and also play a role in the story itself. So these are like ancient scriptures from, so it's kind of like a Narnia-esque exploration where it's like, hey, these might be from a different world, which sounds kind of hammy now that I'm saying it out loud, but but they act as triggers for the main character to get his memories back. And so each scripture, like, you see the actual tie-in with that memory. You understand intuitively why it triggered that memory to come back. And it turns the story forward. It progresses the plot. And so it feels vital. It feels like it fits and it feels important, but it's not tacked on, and it's not just put there for, you need this, thus I'm giving it to you. It's like, okay, this story has a point. It has a message. Every story does, right? That core central spine is like, okay, you're making a statement with it. And what's the statement that we're making? Okay, so then you put in the scriptures that build towards that, idea. Because storytelling, you're trying to angle everything that happens in a story to show a character struggling between two competing viewpoints. And what the character ends up doing about that viewpoint at the end tells you something about the way that the world works. Sometimes if you have a tragedy, it shows you that the character chose the wrong thing. And then they chose the wrong competing viewpoint. And if it's, a happy ending, they chose the right competing viewpoint. And that's what you're promoting. And so there's different ways that story approaches kind of teaching you about how the world works. But if you don't take those viewpoints seriously on both sides, it kind of cheapens it all.
Oh, sure.
And so
it's a straw man. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so the scriptures just help to kind of like tease out, like, okay, what are these competing viewpoints? And so the meaning is more intuitive and embedded within the actual events of the story itself, rather than some statement that we're making explicitly, verbally. But it's essentially a story about self-sacrificial love, and what that means.
And it's based on John, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's based on the Gospel of John. So the kind of provocative what if that led to the story was, what if Judas was given a second chance, only he didn't know he was Judas?
Wow.
And so it's the exploration of like, okay, God gives us second chances.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Do we deserve it? Do we deserve love? Is love something you earn? Is it something that you have to take for yourself? Or is it something that you should withhold from certain people, or give freely to everyone, without worry of backlash or the danger that offers to you? What does Scripture say about this, and how does life bear it out? And so that's essentially the exploration of the game, and it's couched in this relationship between Clayton and Ember, this little fireball, who gives him a second chance.
As a team, we haven't talked much about this, but because we're giving the game away for free and partnering with different ministries, do we have different goals or KPIs that we're going to measure this game against?
Yeah, we do. I mean, reach will be one of them. How many players actually get to like all the way through the game? Because really, as a story experience, we want as many people to experience the whole thing as possible. Because that's where you get the value. That's where you're like, oh, I see what this is all about. But then, we're planning to also do like a Bible study series that is a free companion to it. So like, for example, youth groups could kind of like play through the game together, level at a time, and go through a Bible study companion series alongside it. And so there's going to be different KPIs and different, distribution methods, because there will be people who just play it naturally on Steam or iOS or Android. But then there's also going to be partnerships with ministries where they have like grassroots, like, hey, our groups are going to do this. And so obviously also because we're donor funded, we're hoping people will back the production of future games as well.
Yeah.
And the translation of this game into other languages. So that's another KPI, but mainly it's reach and the depth of that reach. How deeply does it engage people? What kind of life change does it actually lead to? So stories of actual life change, testimonials, what it's meant to people. As a ministry, we're really wanting to make holistic spiritual change in people's lives. So not just focusing on evangelism, but also if you evangelize someone, what's the next step? You want to get them plugged into a local church and work with other ministries to make sure that that's good for them in the long term, rather than just a short term, inspiration of, oh, I love Jesus for a week and then I forget about him for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So we're trying to approach it in more of a holistic framework. And partnering with other ministries helps us do that.
Yeah. And I think that holistic piece is especially important for the artistic piece in my mind, like the idea of having a curriculum or something to go alongside it, because oftentimes artists feel like the piece that they're making is like their entire shot at this. So sometimes it can become didactic or just hurt the art in the long run, right? And
totally. Yeah. And honestly, early explorations of Clayfire did that. And it's a struggle to find, like, where's that balance? And everyone has to find it for themselves, right?
Yeah.
But the thing I've found through the years is that art is not a good vehicle for complex, abstract theology. Art is a much better vehicle for very simple things, right? But it is a powerful tool to tie people together in relationship.
Yeah.
At its core, and this is why I'm really bullish on human art, not AI art, but at its core, I believe art to be about human connection. You follow a particular author, Brandon Sanderson, for example. You follow Brandon, right? Because you feel like he speaks to you. You understand who he is. You get to know him a little bit through his podcast, whatever. And you're like, oh yeah, I want to read that next book more because I feel this connection to this person, right? Mm-hmm. And you come to trust what he's going to deliver to you. And there's that back and forth between the artist and the person. And then there's also, like, side to side, there's other people, other fans within that fandom that you can connect with. And so it's about that relationship between fans as well. And art is really great at carving out that kind of relational space. You're making space for people to, like, get behind something they think is cool and belong and, like, make their own club, right? And so it's not a great way to teach people all of Scripture. It's just you got all this visual stimulus, you got all this, like, in games as well. You have it's a lot coming at the player at one time. So the more you can focus it down, the stronger it will actually be, and the more impact it will actually have. It's like in story, right? Yeah. If your story is about human trafficking and the environment and racism and self-sacrificial love and justice, like, it's going to be about nothing. It's going to be about nothing. No one's going to care. No one's going to know or understand it. You look at any of the greatest films, they're super hyper focused on one main idea. It's like Finding Nemo. It's about, if you love someone, you got to learn to let them go, right? Yep. That's what the entire story about. Every single scene is building towards that theme. Yep. That if you love someone, you can't just suffocate them. You have to let them go and be themselves. And, a lot of Disney films are about follow your heart, right? Like that's it. That's what it's about. And you can argue all day long about if that's actually true or a good thing. But that's what it's about, right? And it's powerful because it's focused. And so you have to choose what you're going to focus on and not feel. I think as Christians, we a lot of times feel a moral obligation to give all of the Bible to people at one time, but no one, not even like that's not how we learn the Bible, right? We learned it one little bit at a time. And if you go to a sermon, they're not trying to cram the entire scriptures into one sermon. I would challenge you to find even one sermon that gives the whole of the gospel accurately. I mean, it doesn't happen often, right? There's a lot that's there. And so focusing in, okay, what can you actually give to people in a way that will pour in and will stick with them and resonate emotionally? Because that matters, and I think a lot of times we think that the intellect is all that matters, but the heart matters greatly.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Scripture talks about how even Satan believes and shudders. Good for him. Like, that's not going to do him any good. So if you believe in your head, but you don't care for God at all, you don't love him, you have no heart connection, what does that mean? Is that saving faith? I mean, really? And art is really powerful at inciting desire in people. Let's use that to incite desire for God.
Yeah.
Instead of desire for any number of things that aren't good, right? And I think focus in on what will resonate emotionally and draw people closer to the heart or truth of God. And narrow your focus and you'll have more success. But yeah, so for us, it was like, we had to narrow it down. Like Clayfire, for example. It's about self-sacrificial love, but we had to make that specific to the person, to the character, right? So Clayton, he's got his mom, he's lost his mom, and so it's about his relationship with his mother. Like that's the filter, the unique filter through which we explore that. And so it's personal to him. It's personal to his story. And the more specific you get with that, the more narrow you get, the more powerful it is. So, anyways, that I would say it's a difficult line to tread, but the more narrow you go, usually the more successful you are at having an impact.
That's good. That's a good insight. Okay, let's change direction a little bit. Let's strip back the varnish. Not that we've had a whole lot of varnish, or you have much varnish as a person. You're pretty open and real.
My fake face, my fake mustache.
Yeah, just take it off. Okay, we are a little over a year and a half into this first game.
Yeah.
What have you learned about game development?
It's hard. It's really hard and super complex. I think the process of making the animated film was like super difficult. I would say the most difficult thing that I've been involved with in my life. But there's more complexity to game design than film design. Film design, like the pipeline is way more well established. And the scale and scope of it is huge. But you have so many specialists you can go to. And it's like, the formula you need to build it, right?
And you said you had like 600 plus people on that?
Yeah. It was over 600 contractors total. Now that includes like people who worked on it for like a week,
sure.
in post-production and things like that. Musicians who played for 3 days. But it's a lot of people, right? But in game design, you have all of that, and then you have the chaos of you have to make it fun for someone to interact with it. So it's like every player's their own little chaotic director, right? And you have to set like the scope for them to like make their movie out of it, And it's just this whole other dimension that you don't even have to think about in any sort of artistic medium. And even if you're like doing it on a really small scale, it doesn't mean it's easier, because that means you just have to do crazy diverse things in a really small team. And I think the unknowns are a lot greater in game development unless you're working with a very well-established genre template. So if you're trying to do something where you're kind of blending genres together, or you're trying to do something a little bit new, it's really difficult to rein in the scope of that, and because you just don't know what you don't know, and there's a lot that we don't know in game design, and it's a younger art form too. So it feels a little bit more like the Wild West than film development does, and so I think the thing I've learned is just how complex it is, and how little you really know, on the front end, and just to be expecting constant change and iteration, just how valuable quick iteration is, continuous refinement. Yeah.
So let's talk about how you've approached building a team. Originally, when you first got started, you were thinking that you would learn Unity, and then you came up against the harsh truth of game development programming. So how did you build the team that we have?
Well, we basically already had David, who's a artist / animator, and then me, and I knew we needed at least one programmer. So I was like, well, I should probably try and find a programmer. And just started looking online for like, okay, who programs games and seems to be a Christian and not, and pretty experienced. So it's just started reaching out to different people, and ended up through a couple connections reaching out to Josh Paulison, and because I'd seen like videos that he had been doing, and he was busy working at a studio at the time. Recommended Jeff Neat, and I was like, oh, that sounds familiar. And he had been a person I'd like stumbled across and looking at stuff, that's another story. But talked to him, showed him the demo that we had done, and he was pretty quickly on board, and we had the budget to hire him, so we hired him, and then that led to him suggesting that we hire you, and so reached out to you, and there's kind of that heart connection of like, hey, we both really love the Lord, care about ministry, we care about art, we're doing things that's like, and it was just the right timing. So I think it was really just through pretty organic relationships, and also a little bit of, I think, God-led kind of connections, stuff that you can't control. Then we built out and got Mark on board and the other people, and Greg, one of our producers, just like randomly reached out. I thought he was going to sell his services, but he actually wanted to come work for us. So it was, that was interesting. And he's been great too. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's been a weird ride. It definitely feels like a special time that God's like, just like the planets are aligning and the laser beams shooting through, and it's just been a lot.
So let's just break it down for people. So we have 3 artists, we have 2 programmers, a full-time designer, and then Jeff kind of does half-time design, straddles that line, and you do narrative design. And then Greg is the producer.
Yep. And then we have someone doing audio stuff as well, sound effects, and then we'll have composer, of course. We want to do full VO for the game as well, so there'll be voice actors and all that, and then stuff for pre-rendered cutscenes. So that'll be a separate pipeline, more like a traditional 2D pipeline for that. So there'll be more people like that, but. Yeah, a lot of it was just built out of like, okay, we have this need, we know we have the need, we had the budget, and so go find the people. And it was pretty much everyone we found has been through personal referral, except for Darnell, our art director, who I just saw his stuff and I was like, hey, this is what we need. This is what we need. Reached out to him, talked, and it was the right fit, and he's been amazing. So, I think one of the things that we were really careful about was just hiring people who had the right values and culture. And that's a lot more important than you think it is, because you got to really be able to trust the people who are in the trenches with you, and a bad relationship can really explode things. And so we're really lucky we found a really solid team of super trustworthy people, and so that's where it's like, okay, that's a God thing.
Yeah, totally. So have there been any missteps along the way?
Yes.
There's been roses and honey and milk.
Yes, we have reached total perfection. And so I'm glad you're listening to us today so you can attain it as well. No. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of time wasted early on, especially because we didn't have like an actual real designer on board. Just wasting tons of time doing things backwards, focusing on the wrong things, making things pretty before we made them functional. That was dumb. Don't do that. And also just not quite doing the work of figuring out what game we were trying to make. Like from a genre perspective, what's the gameplay hook? What's the loop? What's the point? And even the core of the story, like at the beginning, I didn't know what size story you could fit into a game. So there was a lot of unknowns with how much dialogue you could shove into things without it feeling bad, and like how to approach that, because you do have to approach writing for games very differently than you do writing for a feature film or short form animation. It's a totally different beast. So there's a lot of wasted time of like, well, that didn't work. Throw that out. Try again. But
yeah,
I think we've overall done a decent job of not wasting a bunch of effort. But yeah, it's not been perfect. That's for sure.
Yeah. And that's game design in general, right? That's a lot of just trial and error and quick loops and failing fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is that way in everything, but I've felt it much more so in the game development space than I have in others. But yeah.
So what tips for ministries would you have if they're wanting to make their own game, or maybe partner with somebody and have somebody else make them a game?
Yeah. Make sure it's really what you should be doing.
What do you mean by that?
It's really easy to get distracted by shiny things, and lose focus on what your core mission is and how that should be expressed within your organization. A lot of ministries aren't structured well for creative production, and it can be a really painful thing if you try and force it into that, if that's not who you really should be. So just making sure you really do the work of identifying, is this really who we are? You got to be all in on creative production to make it anything good at all. And if you aren't, you're probably going to waste a lot of money and become very frustrated and potentially harm donor relationships. That can be really damaging. You don't want to do that, right? So, I mean, yes, I believe Christians making games is super important. I do not believe everyone should be doing it, because it's not everyone's calling. And you should not be trying to do something that is not your calling. You should be really trying to just follow God's will for what you're stewarding and steward it well. We've had a lot of internal discussions just as a nonprofit ourselves. Like, we made some very purposeful decisions to not do certain things. Like, we did not want to build ourselves into this big company that has international bases in other countries where we're doing the distribution ourselves. We did not do any social media until we had pretty much a completed product. And that was a very purposeful decision because we were so small. We didn't have the bandwidth to do that and do the creative production at the same time. At the time, we didn't. And so, we had to really focus ourselves to be able to actually execute. And if we had gotten distracted with other things, we probably would have failed. So just be sure that it is what you should be doing. And then if it is, fully commit to it and really do your research and figure out what this is going to mean and cost. I think a lot of ministries get into it thinking it's going to be easy, or it's going to be fast, or it's going to be cheap. It is none of those things. Creative production is never, it's almost always going to cost more than you think it will, and be more time consuming and be much more difficult. And so just be aware, go in with eyes wide open, and know that it's it's something that you really should be doing, that it's a calling, and just fully commit to it and do it with excellence. The other thing is, do what's within scope for what you've been entrusted with. It's also really easy to just set your sights so unrealistically high that you doom yourself to failure from the beginning. And
we've cut a bunch.
Yes. And you kind of have to fall in love with cutting, where you're like, oh yeah, I'm excited, I can cut that whole thing. It's the opposite of what you naturally feel, in your earlier stages growing as an artist. But if you are an artist for very long and you do anything of quality, you realize that cutting is a very valuable thing. You got to cut everything that's not worth being in there. And that just strengthens everything else that is there and gives you space to explore things more deeply. So, you kind of have to be, I've seen certain people get into creative production and not do the work of figuring out how to steward it properly. And that's become a really painful thing. And it's done real damage. And so, you have to go in knowing the risks. And then I've seen other people who they get into it and they think that it's more possible than it is to do a massive project. Like, an MMORPG is like ridiculously expensive, ridiculously difficult. And if you're a small ministry, you only have a few $1 million. And if you know you need like $50 million to actually make it work, maybe you shouldn't be trying to do that if you have no feasible way of getting $50 million. Like, maybe you should just do,
or be able to sustain it long term, right?
Yeah. And so, if in doing something you have an extremely high risk of harming other people, it's probably you, not God. Let's just be realistic. It's very easy for us to get lost in our dreams for selfish ambition, but that's a dangerous thing. So just be careful, that sounds like a lot of negative, but I think you have to really be realistic, and it's not an easy road to produce creative stuff that's high quality. And you have to really love it and take it seriously and do it passionately, or else it'll show. But
I mean, it's the harsh truth, right? I mean, the Bible tells us to count the costs, so we have to do the due diligence and be really, really honest with ourselves and, as teammates and stuff. What can we actually do? What is God actually calling us to do? What are we reading in and layering on? And
yeah, definitely. And I think as well, God's not impressed by anything we do. And I think we get lost in that idea that bigger is always better. Just especially in America. I am not anti-American at all. I'm very American. So just FYI, disclaimer. But really what he cares about is obedience. And so if God's entrusted you with $100 and he says, I want you to invest this properly, steward it well, then do it. Don't try to take out credit for like $10,000 if he's only entrusted you with 100. Just be wise and a good steward of where God's put you right now. And he'll entrust you with more down the road, And if he doesn't, you were faithful. That's all that matters, right? That's usually, if I have discussions with people and they're like really bummed out by that, that's a little bit of a red flag. Like maybe your pride's taking you for a ride.
Ooh.
And that's not good.
Yeah.
In leadership, that's dangerous. If God's putting you in a position where you're leading a ministry, you gotta do what you can to root out your pride and get it out of the way. Try to seek accountability and transparency, because the more that you're lifted up on a pedestal, the more difficult your life gets. The more money you're entrusted with, the more difficult your life gets. If you care at all about being obedient to God. If you don't care at all, then it's super easy, right? go blow that money. Have fun. But if you care at all about being faithful, it just gets harder the higher it goes. So be careful what you wish for, because it's not easy. So just, it's like Scripture tells us to seek contentment in all circumstances.
Yep.
To seek the Lord above all things, and He'll give us the desires of our heart. Why? Because He'll make Himself our desire, and He'll give us Himself. That's what matters. We exist to love and worship God and obey Him. Period. We don't exist to do big things that look impressive to people. We don't exist to make that dream project in our heads. Light of the World is a huge project. Clayfire is way smaller. That seems like a step down, right? But it's what we're supposed to do. We felt called to it, and we're stewarding it properly, or at least trying. And if the next thing after that is even smaller, okay, we're gonna go steward that. It's not about the size. I heard a quote once. I don't know if it's real or a story that I think it was Mother Teresa had done a program in India, and it failed or whatever. Some guy asked her, "Man, what do you feel about this failing?" And she said, "God didn't call me to be successful. He called me to be faithful." And I think about that pretty often, because there's so many things you can't control when you get into these positions where you're entrusted with these massive projects, like marketing Light of the World. I can't really control much at all. A lot of it is just plain outside of my control. And it's humbling. It's terrifying. But it's also freeing if you're like, okay, God put me in this position to steward it, and I'm going to do everything I can to steward it. That means I'm like sweating every day. And then when I'm done at the end of the day, if I've done the next right thing that day, shut off, trust God, lay your anxieties at His feet, and just believe that He's going to take it from there. And if He doesn't, that's His will. Be at peace with it. That's a hard place to be in, but it's what God calls us to just be content with what He gives us, to trust Him, and then be obedient in the process.
So good. Before I ask my last question, I just want to say thank you for partnering with CGDC, and the Salvation Poem Project has been a generous sponsor for this year's conference coming up. And also, we've partnered together on some of the mini games for Light of the World. And I just want to say thank you for that. Thank you for your generosity and all of TSP. Related to that, it seems like there's a lot of excitement building around quality Christian entertainment. You see things like House of David and King of Kings, and just different...
the David movie.
Different... Yeah.
Yep.
What do you see for faith-based video games in the future? It feels like we're entering kind of a new season. I see God connecting some dots and stuff, and I'm personally excited. But what do you see?
I think it's going to rock. I think we're going to see some really good stuff come out. I really hope so. I'm excited for it. I see some people doing some cool stuff, and I think the church really needs to get behind it, And if ministries and churches can really get behind leveraging games to build community and to make an impact on people's lives, the world will be better for it. And but it remains to be seen how much support there's going to be. But I don't care. We're just going to do our thing and let's go. Let's do what we can.
Be obedient. Yep. Huh? Yeah. Awesome. So, where can people go to find out more about Salvation Poem and Light of the World?
Well, you can go to salvationpoem.com, or you can go to lightoftheworld.com. And all the information about the film is there. But if you go to salvationpoem.com, you can see, stuff about New Believer Course, the Salvation Poem, Light of the World, Clayfire, and the other things that we're cooking up. So, yep.
Thank you, Brendan.
Thanks for having me. It's always good to talk.